Let me tell you a story about a guy named David White. It's one of those stories that proves how a single, totally ordinary moment can completely change the direction of a person's life and lead to an absolutely extraordinary adventure.
I mean, really, think about that for a second. What if one tiny moment, a simple idea, or just flipping a page could just rewrite your entire future? Well, for one man, that's exactly, literally what happened.
So, picture this. David is a 30-year-old salesman. He's on a business flight, minding his own business. Someone hands him a magazine and he sees an article called Cruising the Good Life Afloat. And something just clicks. He had basically zero sailing experience, but he decides right then and there on that plane, he was going to sail around the world.
Now, you got to remember, this was way before GPS, like long before. If you wanted to cross an ocean, you had to use the stars. So David and his buddies had to teach themselves this ancient art while they were sailing down the coast of Mexico. Their logic was pretty funny. To get to Mexico, you just head south and turn left. Simple enough. But to find a tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Yeah, you'd better know what you're doing.
And this quote, man, it just says it all, right? By 1974, they have a boat, they've got their new skills, and David and two friends just point the boat towards the South Pacific. They were, in his own words, naive and dauntless. I love that. It was the start of a real, true adventure into the great unknown.
Let's just let that number sink in for a second. 4,200 nautical miles. That was their first big open ocean trip, from Acapulco to the Marquesas Islands. For a crew who had pretty much just taught themselves how to navigate from books, this was an absolutely massive undertaking.
But then, one of those tiny little moments happens that changes everything. They're in Tahiti, in their only dinghy, you know, the little boat you need to get from the big boat to the shore, it just floats away in the middle of the night. Gone. And without it, you're kind of stuck. This one little accident completely split up the crew and forced David into a huge, life-changing decision. So what does he do next? This is just incredible. He doesn't give up. He decides to sail back by himself. That's 4,700 nautical miles from Tahiti all the way back to San Francisco, totally alone. I mean, when he showed up, the Coast Guard was floored. This just wasn't something people did.
That crazy solo trip proves something to David, and probably to everyone else. He was actually really good at this. He was hooked. So naturally, he sets his sights on something even bigger, a solo race all the way from San Francisco to Japan.
And you gotta love this little detail. Just 2 days before he's supposed to leave for Japan, a friend gives him a kitten. A tiny little kitten. So this cat sails the whole way across the Pacific with him. And when they get to Japan, the cat becomes this huge celebrity. The press went wild for the story of the solo sailor and his little feline first mate. So at this point, he sailed the Pacific solo, he sailed the Atlantic solo. What's left? Well, for David, the next step was obvious. He knew a single-handed round-the-world race was going to happen eventually, and he thought, hey, it should start here, in the U.S. So he just decided to create it himself. He called it the Around the Alone.
I love this. When he pitched the whole idea to Sir Robin Knox Johnson, who was literally the first guy to ever sail nonstop around the world, the response was perfect. Sir Robin, knowing exactly how brutal a trip like that is, just said, better you than me, bud. But David was not going to be stopped.
Okay, so here's the next problem. To race in the Southern Ocean, his current boat just wasn't going to work. He needed a bigger, faster, 56-foot monster of a racing yacht. He couldn't afford to buy one, so what do? If you're David White, you just build one yourself, from scratch with some friends in a shed, as you do.
And the process was just wild. They literally drew the full-size plans right on the floor, they built the entire hull upside down, and then had to figure out how to flip this massive thing over. Then they built a deck, attached it, and finally put the giant lead keel on the bottom. He named her Gladiator.
So the plan is in motion. He writes up the rules in '81, makes the entry fee a super low $400. The very first Around the Alone race is set to kick off in 1982, with another one planned for 4 years later. The stage was set for his biggest challenge yet.
So it's 1982. The race he dreamed up, the one he organized, is finally happening. And David's not just the guy in charge, he's out there competing in the very boat he built with his own 2 hands. I mean, this was it, the absolute peak of his dream.
But then, disaster. He's racing through the most dangerous waters on the planet, the Southern Ocean, and the boat's going so fast that the self-steering gear, which is basically the only way you can sail alone, it just breaks. The whole thing rips right off the back of the boat. Without it,
The race is impossible.
His race was over. Just like that. After all the years of dreaming, planning, building, he had to drop out of the very race he created. He put it pretty bluntly himself. I went back to Cape Town with my tail between my legs, cried a lot. The heartbreak must have been just immense.
But here's where the story gets really, really good. Because this is a story about resilience. After that soul-crushing failure, David did not give up. He spent the next 4 years getting ready, and in 1986 he was right back at the starting line, ready to try all over again.
And you can really see the whole story right here, in these two columns. The first attempt in '82 ended in failure. The second, in '86, in the same race, with a renamed boat, this was his shot at redemption.
And just to remind ourselves of the scale of this thing, 27,000 miles. That is circumnavigating the entire globe. This wasn't just about finishing some race. This was about conquering a personal demon on a planetary scale. And this time, nothing went wrong. He did it. He sailed all the way around the world and crossed that finish line back in Newport, Rhode Island. He hadn't just finished one of the toughest races on Earth. He had finished his race, the one he dreamed up, built a boat for, failed at, and finally conquered.
I mean, what a journey when you just lay it all out like that. It all started with a magazine on a plane. From that one moment, he taught himself to navigate by the stars, he crossed oceans by himself, he created a legendary race, and after a devastating failure, he came back and saw his own dream all the way to the end.
It's just such an amazing story of perseverance that all started with one simple, impulsive decision. Which kind of leaves you with one last question, right? What's your magazine article? What unexpected moment is out there waiting to completely change the course of your life?